All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for lesson 7.7. Okay, lesson 7.7, we're going to do 4 words. So the words for today's lesson are number 1, energy sources, number 2, energy uses, number 3, energy consumption / energy production, and number 4, electricity production / electricity consumption. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about factories. So I felt it was time to mention that obviously factories are powered by energy. So we need to look at where does that energy come from, right? What are the sources? Meaning like what are the actual elements that create the power? And then also the sources being what countries make the power. Okay, so today's lesson is all about energy. All right, so we're going to divide up word number 1, which is energy sources, into 2 different categories. Our first category is non-renewable sources, and our second category is renewable sources. In our non-renewable category, we've got oil, also known as petroleum. We've got coal, pretty self-explanatory. And number 3, we've got natural gas. And fourthly, we've got nuclear power. So overall, the cons of these things would be that they're non-renewable. They're eventually going to run out. And then, of course, the other con is that they're bad for the environment. And so people are searching for other ways to obtain energy. Concerning 2 of these things, we also need to discuss something called unconventional resources. Unconventional resources are ways to get these non-renewable sources, but in unconventional ways. That means ways that are not yet proven to be environmentally friendly or not. So it's a bit complicated, but basically the 2 non-conventional resource ways to get these things are, first of all, with petroleum. You can get petroleum from something called oil sands. So oil sands are literally dirt that have pieces of oil or something like it called bitumen in it, and so you can dig them up. You can dig up those, that rock and sand, and then you can stick it through a whole bunch of processes, and in the end, you'll get oil. So complicated. People don't exactly like it. There's controversy if you look it up on the internet, but right now, like Canada, especially the province of Alberta, they're making a lot of money off of extracting oil from the dirt. Okay, and then the second unconventional method is to get more natural gas by something called hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking. And so it's complicated, but you stick pipes down in the earth, and then they drill holes, and then they then they pump tons of water in, and they fracture the rock down at the bottom. And so then the natural gas that's in there will then go up into the pipe and will go being able to be collected. So both the collection of oil sands and the hydraulic fracturing are up for debate. A lot of people think that they're not environmentally friendly. And then lastly, also nuclear power. Nuclear power has a lot of potential because it creates a lot of energy, but also some of the downsides of nuclear power are, number 1, uranium is still a non-renewable resource. There's only so much uranium, and it's found in only certain countries. And then also the problem with nuclear power is that the reactors are really expensive to build. And then lastly, of course, there's the unlikely chance of a meltdown, but that does scare people a lot. There's some famous examples of what happened at Chernobyl in Ukraine, and then also what happened recently in Japan. So these are some reasons why nuclear power actually has gone down in recent decades. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the renewable choices. So your renewable choices for energy are hydroelectric power, using water dams to create power from water, okay? So that one's pretty self-explanatory. Wind, also self-explanatory. You use wind turbines to use the wind to turn turbines to create power. Geothermal power uses the heat from the earth to create power. So That's only good if you are near volcanic activity. And Iceland utilizes this a lot. And then there is biomass. So biomass is creating energy by organic materials. So that would include just burning wood, but also you can burn crops like sugarcane, or you can get like a gasoline type thing from corn, like we talked about before, called ethanol. And then lastly, solar power. So solar power uses photovoltaic sensors which capture the sun's light and turn it into energy somehow. So those are all your choices for creating energy from renewable sources. Okay, word number 2 was going to be energy uses. So we want to look at what uses energy and which kinds of things do they use for that energy. So first up is industries like factories that we'll be talking about a lot. So in terms of the non-renewable choices, being oil and coal and natural gas, industries use 40% natural gas, 30% coal, and 30% oil. All right, then when we look at the transportation sector, cars, buses, airplanes, etc., almost all uses petroleum only. And then we have our last sector, which is your homes and offices and stores. And so that uses mostly natural gas for heating and cooling of the stores and homes, and then usually coal to make the electricity. All right, word number 3 is going to compare energy consumption versus energy production. So I'm going to put up a chart of the top 10 countries for energy consumption. So on the chart, we have the top 10 countries for energy consumption. And then I just want to compare that to the amount of energy that they produce. Just so you can see, are they producing more than they use? Or are they using more than they produce? Okay, so this chart is the top 10 by consumption matched up with how much they produce in their country. So you can see that in some cases it's pretty close. Like in the case of Brazil, the amount that they consume is almost the same as the amount that they produce. And then other places you can see it's not the same. China definitely consumes more than they produce. And then Iran produces a lot more than it consumes. So I just wanted you to have an idea of where the energy is being consumed and where it's being produced. So the top 10 countries of consumption are China, the United States, India, Russia, Japan, South Korea, Germany, Canada, Brazil, and Iran. Those are the top ones for consumption. Okay, and then lastly for word number 4, I wanted to talk specifically about electricity consumption and production. So this would not take into account the oil that would have been taken into account in the energy consumption. Okay, so now we're not talking about oil because oil isn't used to create electricity. So this is just how much electricity do the countries consume and produce. All right, so the electricity is measured in terawatts, and so just to give you an idea, our light bulbs are like 60 or 100 watts, and so a terawatt is 1 trillion watts. Okay, so this is measured in terawatts. All right, so China, you can see how much they consume and then how much they produce. So in the case of China, China actually produces more electricity than it consumes. Okay, so does the United States, and so does India, and so does Russia. Okay, so pretty much all of the countries are producing more electricity actually than they're consuming. But remember, that's not taking into account the oil and the gas to fuel all of the cars. Okay, so today we're not going to do the review question. We're doing something a little bit different. I wanted this video to be a little bit short so that you have time to now go watch some other videos on YouTube that talk about, there's 5 different videos about 5 of the different ways to generate electricity, and you're going to pick 3 of them, and then you're going to write down some of the pros and cons, and then when you meet back up with me in the video chat, you're going to discuss for me which of the 3 that you watched do you think is the best for the future. How should we be creating our energy for the future? Okay, so you're going to watch 3 of the choices, and then you're going to compare them and talk about it with me when you come back.